Interreg 2Cs. It's a great project and harbours well for the future. Obviously, we live in strange times at the moment, but apart from the trauma of the last 15 months, which has also affected many of us, we mustn't lose sight of the most testing environmental issues that we face. We're all very much aware of these issues, and we need to come together on them, globally, nationally and locally, to find solutions, better ways of working and sustainability to ensure we can tackle these issues. A lot could be solved by government, of course, and with COP26 this year, I think we're going to get some big announcements on a variety of environmental matters, but we can also do a lot ourselves in the local context, and this is where PlastiCity comes in. Southend Council declared a climate change emergency in 2019 with the challenge of 2030, not just within the council, but within the borough as a whole. The first of these is in the council's hands, but the second is in all of our hands. And I hope this webinar will enthuse you, make useful contacts for you, and ultimately lead to a truly circular economy within Southend, amongst ourselves and amongst the economy itself. Thank you very much and enjoy the seminar.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mulroney, and it's a pleasure to have such a wonderful group of people here. Can I just say, during the presentations, if everybody could go on mute, that would be really helpful. I'm going to pass straight over to Claire Williamson, who's going to tell you all about what PlastiCity is and the work that's been done so far.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. I just want to talk through PlastiCity and what the project's all about. The basic aim of PlastiCity is to find ways to enable businesses to reduce and recycle more plastic waste and to play a bigger role in the circular economy. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about the higher level project aims and what opportunities this can bring to Southend. So in the UK, the current plastic recycling rate is estimated to be around 30%. So this is approximately 1.6 million tonnes of the 5 million tonnes we use annually. A lot of plastic would be eligible for recycling, but it's not yet captured. These are what we call lost plastics. These lost plastics can form a prominent role in the circular economy if we can find ways to move away from traditional disposal methods. The PlastiCity project is researching the economic opportunities for these lost plastics. We are also trying to address the barriers that prevent us from realising the full potential of plastics in the circular economy, such as collection logistics, sorting facilities, the quality of materials, and the engagement of stakeholders in the value chain. So we're not doing this project alone. We're working with 3 other municipalities in the 2Cs region. So we are Southend, Ghent in Belgium, The Hague in the Netherlands, and Douai in France. Our collaboration gives us a unique opportunity to share expertise, information, skills and findings. This project is jointly funded by the European Regional Development Fund, Interreg, and the project partners. There are 6 key work activities that form the PlastiCity project. PlastiCity is mapping the quantities, qualities and composition of waste and understanding the business barriers and drivers towards recycling. We are researching and demonstrating new technical solutions for logistics, pre-treatment, reprocessing of plastic wastes. Our partners at the University of Ghent have created a state-of-the-art plastic recycling laboratory, which is being used to test, analyse and identify plastic samples collected in the 4 partner cities. Based on these processing and mechanical properties, we will be working with stakeholders in our areas to develop viable business cases for new products made from our plastics. We will be creating a series of pilot recycling hubs for collecting plastics in each of the areas. These hubs will be linked to the new business cases where we will collect plastic materials to recycle. We are engaging with local stakeholders and communicating our project finding to a wider audience to maximise the project impact. So just a little bit about Southend. We've got lots of activities going on in Southend over the next 18 months. So some of the stuff that we have done. We've identified and mapped businesses across Southend, and these include producers, manufacturers and recyclers. And we've collected some interim data about their logistic activities and their views of recycling. In July, we'll be going out and we'll be analysing their waste further. So we'll be collecting their waste and we'll be sorting through it to see if we can find the lost plastics. We will also be interviewing businesses to find out about the barriers and opportunities to plastic recycling. During the interim stage, we also collected information from businesses on ideas for recycling hubs. And these could be town centre collection rounds, or hubs run by businesses, or hubs run by schools. We've been modelling these for logistic solutions and looking at how we can facilitate these hubs and how we can collect and how we can join them to our business models. We are always interested to hear more of your ideas. I mean, we've had some great ideas already, so the breakout rooms are an opportunity for you to bring this up. In the scenarios, we've also been looking at different collection methods, so looking at electric vehicles and e-cargo bikes, and we've been looking, you know, how we can model those in and the environmental benefits of those, because as Carol said, this project is all about, you know, increasing that green agenda. So we now want to really focus on connecting Southend businesses to close the loop in the value chain. We will be working with circular economy experts to develop new business models from our lost plastics, and we look forward to sharing this expertise with you. Our PlastiCity student, Virginie, will be talking later on, and she will be explaining how our partner team has developed a circular business model. Sorry, there we go. So any samples that we collect from Southend, from your waste, or from our hubs will be sent to our mobile pre-treatment unit at the University of Ghent. So, and the mobile pre-treatment unit, they will be able to test these plastics for their properties, for their contamination, what issues this causes them, and also to look at their value for new products as well. We'll be specifically looking at films, and we'll also be looking at rigid plastics as well. And the data that we get from this, we can provide in reports to the stakeholders that have got involved in our collections. So at this stage, I think our main objective is looking for high value plastics for the business cases. When we've done these business cases and we're developing them, we want to work with recyclers and we want to work on new product trials. So we'd also like to work with designers as well. We would like to work with existing technologies or even new technologies like 3D printing. You know, the options are there and they're also available. For all this information that we get, we are going to provide on our digital platform. Our digital platform will provide information on case studies, business cases, we'll provide circular economy training for businesses interested, we'll provide more webinars, and we'll also develop a green accreditation scheme, which we would like to, develop for the businesses and the community in Southend to just keep the messages in this project continuing in the future. Just move on to a few results. So we have a few interim findings from our mapping work, which I'd like to share with you. So in the mapping work, what we did was we identified and categorised businesses across Southend. So we took a representative sample and we put them into their category groups. We surveyed them to establish the status quo of their waste and recycling services. And we gathered some information relating to the type of collections they had, bins used, frequency of collections. We also asked them about what plastic waste was arising in their bins. And if you took part in this, I would like to say thank you. And the results that we had were quite interesting, and I'll just share a few with you now. So just over half of the businesses we surveyed completed the survey. 84% had residual waste collections, and just over half, 56%, had mixed jar recycling collections or a separate plastic collection. 46% of this was film, was reported as film, and 49% of this was reported as bottles. In the status quo survey, we asked businesses to describe the different types of plastics they produced, and businesses described 384 different items that would be made out of plastic. Approximately 2/3 of these items consisted of bottles and plastic films. Generally, more businesses felt obliged to recycle than economically driven to do so. I just wanted to say about COVID that we know that COVID has had a significant impact on businesses. In PlastiCity, we've really had to adjust our processes and align the project to what's going on in the UK and Europe, and also to the Council's approach to recovery. But what we have also seen is a change in consumer behaviour and waste flows during the pandemic. And I think we would like to continue to look at this and look for opportunities to come back greener and economically, circular, I suppose, is what I'm looking for. We want to find ways to make your waste your opportunity. Finally, this is us. So I'm Claire, I'm the project manager. Alitzia's a project officer on the team. Rachel is our communications officer. And Yasmin is our project officer who is on maternity leave at the moment. As you can see, we have a range of skills and experience which we're really pleased to bring to Southend. And our contact details. Please get in touch, and I look forward to speaking to you in the breakout rooms. I'm now going to hand you back to David, who is going to talk to you a little bit more about the circular economy. David, do you want to take over the slides?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Claire. Thank you for a really helpful overview of what PlastiCity is. I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about circular economy. Just out of interest, hands up. How many of you, physical hands up or virtual hands up, how many of you are already aware of circular economy as a phenomenon? Few of you. Good. That's great. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of an overview. So firstly, I'm David Greenfield. I run Sonex and Tech Takeback, two circular economy businesses, but I'm also the European External Affairs lead for an organisation called the Circular Economy Club, which is an international network of 260 cities across the world that set up a networking group for circular economy and people that are interested in circular economy. Okay, so international context of circular economy. Many of you will know about all of these activities and some of these bits of legislation, but in the last 6 years in particular, Sustainable Development Goals have been put in place by the UN. We've seen climate emergencies being declared by multiple organisations, including local authorities. And we've seen the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Fifth Assessment Report, very exciting read if you have got the time, which is exploring how we can actually start mitigating and adapting to climate change. In the UK, we have got a raft of different policies that have been in place over the last 12, 13 years, and there's a lot more that come before this. Probably the most relevant and most important is the 25-year Environment Bill that came out in 2018. That was followed by the Resources and Waste Strategy for England. And that's currently got 4 different aspects. EPR, which is Extended Producer Responsibility, DRS, which is Deposit Return Schemes, plastics tax, and consistency of collections for residents across the country. All of those are being consulted on at the moment. The implications for that is that we are potentially going to be in a place where companies have more responsibility for collecting the materials they put onto the market. They're going to get taxed for more plastics, and local authorities are going to have to offer possibly a more consistent service between different authorities. That's quite an interesting one as we speak. All of that's going to be wrapped up in the Environment Bill as well, which is coming out at the moment. So what is the circular economy? Very simply, we've been working in many cases on a linear model over the last 200 years. We take stuff out of the ground, we make stuff with it, we use it, and in many cases we throw it away. And the circular economy is about how we can actually move away from that linear process. How can we keep the resources in use for as long as possible? How can we extract the maximum value from them whilst they're in use? And then when they come to their end of their first life, how can we then recover and regenerate those products and give them another life? So you can see on the right-hand side, you've got a little a model there that just gives you an idea of thinking in cycles, thinking in systems. A lot of what the circular economy is about is understanding the life cycle of the products or the services or the operations that you're currently undertaking, and the raw materials, energy, water that's used in running those systems, and trying to make those as efficient as possible and managing those materials in a way that maximizes their value. What I'm going to do is just link this to the Sustainable Development Goals. Some of you will be aware of the SDGs as they're known. Circular economy is actually a way of delivering some of these, and in particular, circular economy systems and opportunities fit very nicely into SDG number 9, SDG number 11, SDG number 12, and number 13 as well. They do fit into others as well, but they're predominantly the ones. So see circular economy as a facilitation mechanism for delivering sustainable development goals. And where does it sit within the refurbishment hierarchy? So many of you will be aware of the 3 R's. We had the recycling, reuse, and residual. This has now become a little bit more detailed. So we want to look at how we can disassemble and refurbish stuff. Then can we reuse it? And then if we do have materials that are not able to be reused, how can we close loop recycle? How can we get them back to what they originally were used for? And if we can't do that, how can we then give them an alternative use in recycling? That's where resource management, circular economy really sits. As we go below the line, we then get into waste management, and anaerobic digestion is producing some really good circular activities as well. But we then go back down the waste hierarchy, as many of us know this. Now, industrial symbiosis is part of the circular economy, and this is just an overview of one example in Northern Ireland where they've been focusing on industrial symbiosis, which is essentially a dating system for different things, different materials. So one industry's waste product could actually be the input to another industry. What Northern Ireland have been doing, as you can see from here, they've actually got nearly 2,500 members on board. And those organisations are essentially looking at how they can move their materials between each other. You can see that they've got £45 million worth of economic benefit in Northern Ireland across 600 innovation schemes. So there's a lot to do this, and we're going to explore this as we go through this. And this is one of the principles of circular economy: understanding what waste streams you as a business or you as an organisation might produce and how somebody else might be able to use it. We're talking about plastics today, and I thought this might be quite interesting. This is a piece of work we've done with an organisation called Suez, just exploring the source of some of the plastics in the environment. And this is probably to some of you is an unknown. We found this when we did the research, but roughly 28 to 34% of all plastics in the ocean come from our vehicle tyres. And these are microplastics that get abraded as we drive about our cities and towns. Most of that is ending up in the oceans. So it's an unknown, it's an invisible pollutant. What we want to try and do is understand how we can capture that. But that sits very much in the context of circular economy, understanding where the problems are. So our road tyres are actually a problem alongside the macroplastics that we see in terms of plastic bottles and films. So there's a lot going on in circular economy. Many of you will have heard of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They're running a summer school this summer for school kids. And that's a really key part of what PlastiCity wants to do, is to try and get the youngsters in the area also understanding what circular economy is, alongside all of the businesses. There's a lot of governmental activities going on. There's something called the Plastics Pact, currently behind the targets they've set, but what they want to achieve: eliminate problematic single-use plastic packaging, all plastic packaging to be reusable, recyclable or compostable, 70% should be recycled or composted, and that 30% of plastic packaging should have recycled content in it. A lot of manufacturers are looking at this and trying to work on this at the moment as we speak. Circular economy business models. There's a number of different ways you can look at this. This is just one of those. So coming from a very practical life cycle perspective, how can we cycle the materials within the system? That includes reuse, remanufacturing, refurbishing and recycling. How can we extend the life of products? So that's about design, that's about marketing, that's about maintenance and repair. How can we intensify the use of a product or a system? So a very good example is probably your car. In most of the 24 hours it's sitting around parking, and you might use it for an hour or two a day. That's not a particularly intensive use of that particular asset. And then probably one of the key aspects to circular is how can we dematerialize? Do we actually need that product, that service, that material? I'm just going to take you through some of the ways of achieving these. One of those is about how we design. How do we design in circularity to different products and to different systems? What business models do we use? Do we lease rather than purchase? Do we have product as a service? So if you need a hole in your wall, do you buy a drill or do you go and get somebody to provide that hole in the wall? When we're looking at a circular economy, you need to understand the resources in your system. So if you're a manufacturing organization, what are your input materials, what your energy, what your water is, what are your byproducts, what are your waste products? That's absolutely essential to knowing how you can then find an industrial symbiosis for some of those solutions. Product life extension is very simple. Can you repair stuff to avoid it coming to the end of its life? And then, as we've said, reuse, refurbishment, manufacture. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes just taking you through some examples of circular economy products. We're going to look at different categories, so sourcing, manufacturing, logistics, strategy, and consumer end of life, and some interesting examples. These are designed to just highlight the opportunities of circular economy. Some of you may have heard of Nopla. They used to be called Uhu. This is a replacement for single-use plastic bottles. It's an edible capsule. And at the 2019 London Marathon, they put Lucozade in these and gave them to one of the running stations, and people popped them in their mouth and had a quick hit of Lucozade, completely edible, no packaging waste at all. What can you do with different waste materials? Is a company that's taking coffee grounds, agricultural waste, orange peel, and turning them into panel boards for housing. You can see those on the left-hand side. You might also see some mushrooms in the picture. They're growing mycelium, which is the root structure of mushrooms, on other waste products to create insulation boards for new homes, which are zero carbon. So there's a lot of exciting stuff you can do with waste products. On the plastic side, I should say on Biome as well, they're also training mycelium to eat plastic packaging. That's a different seminar on its own. Garçon Wines have created a flat plastic wine bottle out of 100% recycled plastic. So it can fit through your letterbox and reduces the logistics of going back to the depot if it can't be delivered. Organisations like Matter, a small startup in Bristol that is trying to address the microfibers that come from our clothing in the washing machine, and have developed a filter that will be capturing these microplastics, because that, alongside tyres, is one of the major causes of microplastic in our oceans. We've then got new shopping systems. So Loop, some of you will have heard of. This is actually moving away from packaging entirely, single-use packaging, to long-lasting packaging. You can see a Häagen-Dazs tin. That's aluminium. That's reusable. So through Loop, if you're into your Häagen-Dazs and you have it regularly, they'll do a swap of that aluminium container and fill it up again for you, so you're not generating any plastic waste. And you can see with quite a few of the other brands here, that's exactly what they're trying to do. So you have refillables. And talking of refillables, you're already in an area where you've got three very exciting refill and reuse systems. You've got Southend Refills, Loco Soco, and the Refill Room over in Leigh-on-Sea. These are all really perfect for a circular economy, because it is actually encouraging the consumer to avoid packaging waste, which is absolutely key. And then I'll leave you with a couple of other minor little things. This is a really good example. It's called the Library of Things, based up in London. They've now got 8 different libraries. And very similar concept to a normal library where you borrow a book. In this case, you borrow a coffee machine or a jet washer or a Hoover because you haven't got enough space in your home and you don't use it very often. So it's a library of things, as they call it. Yeah, it's a very exciting way of trying to have product as a service. And then one that I've been running with a couple of colleagues on the call, we've been working down in Brighton to set up a electricals collection service where all of the data bearing devices get erased, and then we refurbish them and we get them out to schools. Quite a lot of work there. So that's very much me, being a couple of minutes over my timescales, and I'm going to pass straight over to Vijay from the University of Portsmouth to tell us all about what's been going on in PlastiCity across Europe. Vijay.
Yes. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, David. So, so yes, as David was saying, I am a PhD student at Portsmouth University, where we are also doing a research on circular economy and its application via circular business model. And so briefly, in order to develop new circular business models, as Claire was saying, one of the aim of the project is to be able to implement new business models in each region of the project. But in order to do that, we have started by understanding what are the main and key elements of a circular business models, which are represented here in the schema on this slide. And so briefly, one key element to create a successful circular business model is to adopt a systemic and collaborative approach, where different stakeholders work together. Like we include businesses, but also universities, city council, for instance, but also NGOs that all work together and collaborate to create new circular business models. Another main aspect of this new type of business models is to adopt a life cycle perspective. So David already highlighted this aspect. Indeed, in order to be able to close the loop or extend the life cycle of a project, it's important to adopt a life cycle approach by considering all the different steps of the project, by thinking ahead of the production about the end of life of the project. Another main aspect of such business model is that the outcome and the value proposition not only focus on economic value, but also environmental and social ones. So you can move on to the next slide. So within PlastiCity, in order to concretely implement the idea of having a systemic approach, we have started by identifying which actors are part of the plastic value chain. And so we have identified the different main actors, which include recyclers, logistic companies, but also waste owners, waste management companies, government representatives, etc. But once we have identified these actors, the main issue was to understand how we can facilitate the collaboration and how can these actors collaborate and create opportunities. So within PlastiCity, we are going to design and implement two places. One which is more digital via an urban platform, and another one more physical places via a recycling hub. And the idea will be to create a community within the ecosystem of each region of the project. So more precisely, you can move on to the next slide. So more precisely, the ecosystem is represented, as I was saying, by the urban platform, which will facilitate the exchange of data, information, and knowledge, and the recycling hub, which will facilitate the creation of plastic upcycling opportunities, but also we aim at increasing awareness of from citizens and companies towards plastics and recycling thematic. But in order to coordinate this ecosystem, as Claire was saying, one particularity of PlastiCity is a collaboration between a variety of expertise amongst PlastiCity. You can click on enter, David. And so within PlastiCity, we have different coordinators, which are trying to identify and understand what exists in each city and what kind of opportunities can be developed. And the coordinators are working with expertise from city council, but also from businesses and universities to work together in order to facilitate the exchange of knowledge, but also the exchange of resources between actors of the ecosystem. You can move on to the next slide. So as I was saying, we aim at developing and implementing this ecosystem in each region, but also at PlastiCity level, where we are trying to facilitate the collaboration between actors of the plastic value chain, but also between PlastiCity partners, in order to facilitate the creation of new circular value chains, but also by increasing the recycled plastic content in value chains that already exist in each ecosystem. And so here we really want to engage with actors and create potential partnership. So we have started already with the first business case. You can move to the next slide, David. So the first business model that we are designing at the moment is the creation of face shield made out of plastic recycled plastic, sorry. And this new business case is being developed at The Hague, where we are starting to identify different ways of creating such face shield. So we have trying to identify all the actors' potential partnerships and collaboration. And we aim at collecting plastic in The Hague to collect it via cargo bike, for instance, and reprocess the plastics in the hub, for example. And but this first example has also a lot of potentiality and can be replicable in different cities, and can potentially be replicable in Southend as well. Thank you. That's all for today. I give you back the floor, David.
Thank you very much, Virginia. Really interesting to see what's going on in some of the other projects and the ambition of PlastiCity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go into the breakout rooms. So I'm now going to take us on to the next slide. And just if you have got questions, do put them up in the chat function. And then we've got some time for some questions after all the presentations. So I'm going to pass you over to Sahir Safi from Veolia, who's going to tell us about what happens to the plastics that are put out for recycling in your area. Sahir.
Thanks, David. Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Sahir Safi. I'm Process and Performance Manager in Veolia. In this presentation, I will briefly explain Veolia's infrastructure and expertise in collecting and recycling post-consumer plastic. In the next slide, I'll be sharing with you just an overview of who Veolia is. Really, we operate over three sectors. We're market leader in waste and recycling sector. We collect up to 2.5 million tons of waste, 600,000 of which is dry mix recyclables, and we serve around 8 million people. The next slide, I will be sharing with you, like globally, we have around, I think, 500,000 tons of processing capacity, basically converting plastic into a recycled product that can offset the use of virgin material. In the UK, we have 10 material recycling plants. We have one plastic recovery facility, and we have one basically plastic, what we call plastic or polymer manufacturing facility, which converts milk bottles back into pellets. And we have a post-industrial grades recycling facility, which we refer to as Recycled UK. And we also have the Veolia Sustainable Packaging Academy in the company, where we advise the brand owners on sustainable packaging solutions and designs, where we utilize our infrastructure facilities in the UK and globally to carry out the required tests and validations for concept solutions. In the next slide, I would like to actually then talk more about what happens to plastic when it gets collected by our MRF. So the 600,000 tons of dry mixed recyclables. They go to our 10 material recovery facilities. The plastic get extracted there, and 50 to 60,000 tons of that gets sent to our Rainham facility, where this plastic is sorted into the different categories, as you can see there, like natural HDP, PET, PET colored, and so on. And then basically the remaining, the balance stays either traded in the UK or we trade it in Europe, some of which goes to our Veolia facilities in Europe, such as the PP that goes to Netherlands. So the material that gets sorted in Rainham, basically the natural HDP, which is the milk bottles, gets sent to our Dagenham facility, which I will present at the next slide. So this Dagenham facility, it's a facility that receives the plastic bottles, the milk bottles, it sorts them to basically boost the quality, then it shreds them, and then the washing techniques is applied, and then eventually pelletizing them using extrusion. And this plastic then is basically sold to the dairy industry and the cosmetic, which is replacing the use of virgin material. So this facility receives up to 300 million basically milk bottles per year from the London area. And obviously it's unavoidable to say that the recycled HDP is perhaps saving up to 70% of the energy when we compare it to a virgin plastic. And the next slide will also present basically how we think, and also it's a report by the Imperial College, that plastic is really a very low carbon footprint packaging material when compared to glass bottles and aluminium. And then recycling that plastic, which we do at this Dagenham facility, can save CO2 emissions. And here is the range that we quoted, between 30 and 80%. I think in the last slide, it's linking to David's slides when he spoke about the frameworks and the current consultation that we are active in to provide our response on the government's resource and waste strategy, which is addressing the deposit return scheme, the consistency of collection, and the extended producer responsibility. We think that this is expected to really shape the value chain in the industry, and perhaps will increase collection, recycling rates as well, and the quality of the plastic that is collected. So this is really what I wanted to share with you about our facilities. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to David.
Thank you very much, Sahir. It's fascinating to know, and many of you might not know that you've actually got a industrial plastics recycling facility on your doorstep, which is taking a large proportion of the UK's plastics. So thank you. Right, we're going to go straight on to our final speaker, who's going to give us some insight into attitudes and behaviours towards recycling, and then get some views from yourselves through the power of the internet. So I'd like to introduce Jaret Vijay. He's going to pronounce his surname properly because my Dutch is not very good, from Metabolic, who is an organisation based in Holland. Jaret, over to you.
Thank you, David. That was excellent pronunciation. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jaret Vijay. I indeed work at Metabolic. We are a consultancy focusing on systemic solutions in order to create a circular economy. And today I will shortly take you through some of the drivers and barriers towards plastic recycling, and then also get a bit of interaction going with Mentimeter. Next slide, please. This slide Virginie already showed, and also a Paul mentioned in the chat that not all stakeholders are on this. Indeed, social enterprise should be on this. There's many more, I think. But I just show this once again to kind of show that there are many different stakeholders in this value chain. It's quite a complex one to find new solutions to increase plastic recycling, but also the drivers and barriers for all these different actors are different, as you can imagine. Next slide, please. So what we've done is we created a behavioral survey, which some of you also might have filled out. Thank you so much for that. Which kind of follows this theory of planned behavior, which says that there's a couple of factors that in the end determine if plastic recycling takes place or not. So the attitude towards it, what are sometimes your subjective norths towards it, and also what is the perceived behavioral control. So what's your control over the outcome? These then translate into the intentions and in the end into the end outcome, the behavior. And all of these can be either internal for your own organization, next slide please, or external. So internal, some of things that come to mind is you need a physical possibility to separate plastic waste. There must be budget allocated, there must be time allocated to do this within organizations and owners of plastic waste. But there is also, of course, many external factors at play. In the first picture, you see the prices of virgin versus recycled PET, which is, of course, quite a determining factor if recycling and all its steps in that value chain are worthwhile, and new and different technologies that are coming up to do this. Think, for example, about chemical recycling of plastics. In the next few slides, I'll just quickly introduce some of the drivers and barriers for some of these different stakeholder groups. They're not all on here, but just to kind of get the conversation going also in the breakout rooms. So virgin plastic producers, kind of like the old value chain, if you would say so. Of course, one of their main advantages is the low price of the resources they use to produce virgin plastics. Quite a lot of technical knowledge of plastic making available of different technologies, which also makes it quite hard to make it economically feasible to transform this to a reuse or recycle value chain. But of course also the environmental concerns are growing, the awareness of the environmental risks, and also coming from that pressure from the government and public to go much more towards this reuse or kind of like different circular economy solutions for virgin plastic. Then if we go to designers, so are the people who are design our projects, they have a lot of technical knowledge for creating eco-designs, may it be for more bio-based materials, which this project is not focusing on, or for reusing and recycling them. But also there sometimes is a bit of lack of knowledge about specific features of the different plastics, and a relatively high cost of using the recycled products in their designs. Next one, please. If we then look at the plastic manufacturing stakeholders, of course, the good thing is there's quite a lot of alternatives for manufacturing based also on the different plastic types. There is quite a good optimization strategy, so to say, and these actors usually have quite a perceived ease of implementing different manufacturing processes. But also there, if you go more towards recycling, some of the technology know-how is still limited, and we're still kind of figuring that out, how to do that in a good way. Another important actor group, especially when recycling, is of course logistics. We need to pick up these different types of plastic waste from all these different stakeholders, which also during the PlastiCity project we figured out is quite challenging. You need to know where are large volumes of plastics, at which stakeholders, which sectors do they stem from. But there's also a lot of new innovative logistic solutions. In the PlastiCity project, we're also in The Hague, for example, developing an electric cargo bike, which is picking up different plastic waste streams from companies locally. But some of the barriers there also supply chain pressures, international trade laws and bans, which makes it a bit more difficult to do large-scale transport. And finally, before we go to the Mentimeter, I would like to take you through the last stakeholder groups, waste management and plastic recycling. Of course, from the waste management side, also as Sahara showed, it's quite a positive attitude towards new technology, and there's more and more government incentives to go into waste management and plastic recycling. And that also goes for the plastic recyclers themselves, but also, of course, a very much a drive towards environmentalism and knowledge about the circular economy. But also, I think where this webinar comes in, we're trying to create an understanding about what can be recycled, how do we create these new value chains. Yeah, so that's a really, really short overview of some of the drivers and barriers. But of course, every context is quite different. So to get some insights from everybody here in the webinar, I'm now going to share my screen and press on present. We are going to ask you a couple of quick questions to kind of get an understanding of who is in the room, and what kind of your perceived barriers and drivers are towards plastic recycling. So I think the easiest for all of you is to go to menti.com on your smartphone. You can also do it on your computer, of course. But if you do it on your phone, we can see the live results coming in on your screen. So everybody can go to menti.com and use the code, which is shown above. So that's 84754548. Maybe David, you can also post this code in the chat, so people can copy it. So first, to get a bit of an idea of the 50 people in the room, where in the plastic value chain is your organization positioned? Please fill that in so we can see the results coming in. I already see the first ones coming in. Thank you for that.
Just downloading the app, and then I'll vote. So bear with me, please.
Yes, of course. I think if you go to the website, you should be able to do it without the app, but I will have some patience. All right, we have 12 comments coming in. 17, this is going in the right direction. So quite a mixed group, which is always good to see. And also, I think in the breakout rooms, we're aiming at mixing you guys up, so also see if there's possibility for some interesting collaborations across this value chain, of course. So for now, I think the biggest groups: waste management, designers, policymakers, citizen initiatives, but also some of the other groups are involved, so that's really good to see. With an eye on the time, I am going to go to the next question. These results will be shared with you afterwards. Let's see, how do I now go to that next one? Yes, there we go. So next question is, are you already working with recycled plastics? Just to get a bit of an overview if your organization is already involved in working with recycled plastics. This can be recycled plastics in itself, or also designing products to be recycled at the end, of course. So approximately half of you is already working with them, and half of them is not, or is planning to, which is a good starting point, but also room for improvement, I think is fair to say. Then the next question. So I think we have 4 short questions to kind of get the conversation going in the breakout rooms. So which of the following factors stimulate your organization to recycle or reuse plastics? And you can choose multiple options here. Are you interested in the collection or recycling of plastics? Is it more about the image of your organization? Do you have a lot of information or knowledge about plastic recycling? Is it more from a social sustainability or environmental responsibility, or the potential to create a competitive advantage? Of course, always with these kind of webinars, we are all motivated to make the environment a little bit better. So it's always good to see that one gets a lot of votes, but also quite some scattered over the other categories, I would say. So that's interesting to see. Thank you for that. The next question is, what is the main barrier for your organization to recycle or reuse plastics? Not all of you, of course, will be in an organization where you create a lot of plastic waste, but almost everybody creates a bit. So what are kind of the main barriers internally and to recycle? Is it because it's too complicated? Would you say it takes up too much space? It is too expensive for your organization? It takes too much time, it's too great a burden on the employees? Or you would like to, and you actually separate, but the low frequency of plastic waste recycling is preventing you to do this at the moment? In this one, we see quite a lead, so to say, for that it is too complicated. So of course, there is always a big task to make it easier and to make it as easy as possible for organization to start with plastic recycling. Then 2 more questions to kind of get the conversation going with the Q&A with David as well. Which of the following aspects do you consider important in creating new plastic value chains? So is your organization more focused on designing projects with recycled plastics in them, or more creating or designing projects which are recyclable at end of life? Are you producing in a kind of like small crafts or arts context, or really in an industrial context? Are you focused on creating new jobs? Or is it really more about the different business models, which David also showed some great examples of? Interestingly enough, also quite a lot of votes for recyclability at end of life. That's good to see, to always think about the kind of like the recycled plastics at the start of the product life cycle, but also think about the end of the life cycle and the new business models, which I think we're also very interested in discussing with you more in the breakout rooms. So that's good to see. And then the last question is also a bit more geared towards what can we as the PlastiCity project, but also Southend or other government bodies do to help in stimulating plastic recycling? So what would you like as an organization? What do you need to make steps in this? Is it advice on improving plastic recycling? Is it more focused toward grants? Do you really want to, but the right technology or process is not available? Are you really looking for these facilities? As we were saying, we're also thinking about creating PlastiCity hubs to do this locally. The matchmaking, I think, which this webinar is a first step in, but we'll do much more during the project between all the parties in the value chain. Or more about feasibility studies or guidelines. I think a good score for the matchmaking, so that's always good to hear that we can assist in that, but also in subsidies, grants available, and advice on improving plastic recycling. All right, thank you very much. That was a very quick run through. Sorry if not everybody could enter the Mentimeter, but I think it's interesting to kind of see who we have in the room and kickstart the conversation in the breakout rooms. So thank you very much for that, and back to David.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Jaret. Yeah, really interesting to see the breadth of people that we've got in the room on the Zoom, and some of your attitudes. So we want to take that into the next step, but before we do, we just want to open up to yourselves for any general questions you've had following the presentations. Unbelievably, we're nearly on time, which is great. If you've got a question, you can put your virtual hand up, or if you are on screen, you can put your hand up and I will look to see if I can see you. Any questions, firstly, any clarifications on what you've heard? Any thoughts on what you've heard? If you haven't, it looks as though nobody's putting their hand up, which is absolutely fine. If you haven't, we're going to move you into our breakout rooms. So let me just go to what we're going to be discussing and tell you what we're doing. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion, get a bit of input from yourselves. Looking at the concept of plastics recycling, is it a burden or an opportunity? And this is in the context of what Claire's already presented to you in terms of the next steps on the PlastiCity journey, which is about setting up some plastics recycling hubs, mini hubs, and looking to see whether or not we can actually do some sensible industrial symbiosis between organizations that are here or even not here. So we're going to be using Miro, which is an interactive web-based tool. You'll have a facilitator that will be using this, and they will be taking down notes. And the purpose is to, as I say, gather your thoughts on all of this. There's going to be 3 questions, and we want to make sure that everybody has time for contributions. So when you do go into your breakout room, there's going to be 6 or 7 of you. One will be a facilitator, as I've said, and make sure you allow people some time. If we can be very sensible and either put your hand up virtually or physically, and then we'll explore some of the questions. So we've got 2 roles. Facilitators, you're going to have myself, Jake from Sonex, Natalie from Sonex, Claire from Southend. You'll have Alicia and Rachel from Southend, and Virginia is going to be facilitating the other room. And all of you are your own local experts. You know more about what you're doing than any of us, and that's really important to the circular economy. We need your input, we need your knowledge to be able to understand how best we can actually take some of these next steps. So very quickly, when we go into the rooms, we just want to ask you to do a very quick, hello, this is who I am. Are you already doing something that can be described as circular? Are you already recycling your products? Are you already capturing them, flaking them and turning them into food grade plastic bottles, as Sahir is? And then the 3 questions that we want to discuss are, what opportunities are there for collecting plastics in Southend? What existing activities are there or could be to support recycling of plastics? And what are some of the challenges for collecting plastics? At the end, we'll just ask the facilitators to give a few brief comments of review. And then we'll finish up and tell you what the next steps are on this project and how you can continue to get involved. Any quick clarification questions on that? One thing I should just say to the facilitators, because I forget to say this every time, when you do go in, could you make sure you record at the bottom of your screen so that we've got the recording of the session? That would be great. Okay, I'm going to open up the chat rooms, breakout rooms. I'm just going to check nobody's asked me any questions. Thank you to those of you that have had to pop off. Okay, brilliant. I will open the chat rooms, the breakout rooms, and we'll see you in about 25 minutes.